Well, hello everybody, and welcome back in to Gamecock Central. Kendall Smith joined alongside of Wes Mitchell, back here for another recruiting rundown. And Wes, so much to talk about, but before we get into all of it, let's talk about our sponsor of this show.
Yes, today's episode brought to you by our friend Andy Ludicky. Andy is a franchise consultant at myperfectfranchise.net. Contact Andy today, 404-973-9901, or shoot him an email, andy at myperfectfranchise.net. And you may be like Kendall, you may be saying, Wes, what the heck is a franchise consultant? And I'll tell you, basically what Andy does is he takes franchises and he connects them with people who maybe they can fit their needs. Maybe they can fit what they are looking for when they are wanting to kind of get out of that corporate world. Maybe you're wanting to start a side business. Maybe you're wanting to build wealth, diversify. You want to leave a legacy. Andy can help you with all those things. Andy, not only a franchise consultant, he also is a franchise owner himself. He's going to help people find franchises that fit their skill set, financial requirements, time to commit, and more. Best thing about it, services are 100% free. He is here to help you if you have any questions about business ownership. Again, 404-973-9901.
Good stuff, Wes. Really appreciate our awesome friend Andy for sponsoring this show. And we're excited to be back because we know everyone loves a good recruiting rundown. And I won't talk about all the things happening on the field for South Carolina because it hasn't been the best season so far. Still a little more time to go, but we do have some exciting things to talk about off of the field with recruiting. We'll start off by talking about Jouis Solomon. He is the big news of the week for the Gamecocks, the four-star defensive back who was originally committed to Auburn. South Carolina was able to get him to flip. So, Wes, starting off with him, just what are the Gamecocks getting in a guy like Jouis?
Yeah, I think they're getting a difference maker, Kendall. And this is a guy that has been a priority target for them for months. Obviously, everybody knows he committed to Auburn at one point. It very much looked like South Carolina was going to be the pick leading up to that decision. It was kind of back and forth. And then we were told, hey, Carolina, they held on. He's going to be a Gamecock. And then an hour later, he, is committing to Auburn. So that was a big kind of stinging recruiting defeat for South Carolina, but they kept working it. Most importantly, you look at Dante Reno and these other guys who are committed to South Carolina. They kept working Jouis as well. And as soon as he committed to Auburn, we were already kind of hearing, hey, this thing might not be over. South Carolina's still in it. And, he decommits first, then was at Williams-Brice Stadium on Saturday, took in the game against Florida, and then officially committed to South Carolina on Sunday. And, it's a guy that could play some nickelback, can play safety, could play corner, has some versatility. I think has really good high school film at wide receiver as well. That hasn't been talked about in terms of him at South Carolina, but certainly you look at him, the athleticism, the ball skills, can make big plays down the field. He would be capable, I think, of playing some receiver as well. And that gives you a little bit of extra value as a prospect when you just have that versatility, that diversity in your skill set. So I think this is a great pickup, 4-star for a reason. And there's a reason South Carolina was battling, schools like Auburn and Florida State for him as well. It's a big-time prospect, big-time get for the Gamecocks.
Well, huge because they were able to get Jouis to flip. Obviously, he decommitted from Auburn, spent some time kind of figuring things out, and then committed to South Carolina. But the Gamecocks also trying to flip somebody else, another pretty big name in the class of 2024, Cam Fountain, the 4-star edge, currently committed to Southern Cal. I refuse to say USC. So it's a battle of the USCs on this one, Wes. And where do the Gamecocks stand with Cam?
Yeah, I don't think they're quite in Jouis Solomon territory where, for about 2 months, we were kind of hearing behind the scenes, hey, even though he's committed to Auburn, there's a better chance of Solomon ending up at South Carolina than at Auburn. I don't think we're quite there yet with Fountain, but I do think there's a pretty good chance he ends up somewhere other than Southern Cal. Unfortunately for the Gamecocks, you also have Auburn involved, you have Tennessee involved, you have some other schools involved as well. So with Solomon, it was more kind of just South Carolina. This one, you have multiple schools. And, I think this was a commitment where he got a little bit caught up in the process. It is a long, long way from Georgia to California. And so you notice all the other schools I just mentioned are Southeast schools. You've got the SEC heavily involved here. And we'll see if South Carolina can be the one pick. But I do think there's a pretty good chance Fountain ends up somewhere other than Southern Cal. And we know South Carolina would love another big time edge rusher, pass rusher type to pair up with Dylan Stewart. So this would give you a 5-star guy, a high 4-star guy. He's been a priority target for them for months now. He was going to take an official visit in the summer, and then he committed to Southern Cal. But they have stayed the course. He was in town for the Florida game as well. And, I think they'll push to probably get him back in town for an OV. And, we'll see where it goes from there. But certainly South Carolina very much in this battle as well.
I love how we're like Southern Cal, Southern Cal, Southern Cal. Like,
hey, I know my people, Kendall. We are not going to have people in the comments saying, "Oh, you said USC. They're not USC." We know our audience. We may not know our audience when it comes to whether they want to hear about Taylor Swift, but we do know who USC is to our audience.
That is exactly right. So we are not going to mess up on that. You can certainly guarantee that as you continue to watch the rest of these recruiting rundowns. But Wes, it's so fascinating now in the world of recruiting. It's not just high school recruiting. You're recruiting guys in the transfer portal, you're recruiting guys at junior college. And that's exactly what South Carolina has done over this past week. They offered Jerome Simmons. He's a 2024 guy who would come in that class if he were to commit to South Carolina. Defensive tackle at Highland Community College over in Kansas. So he's been offered by the Gamecocks. I know it's interesting when you think about JUCO guys, they might not get as much attention from the media. I mean, they do at Gamecock Central, but maybe not other media outlets. They're not talking about them as much as they talk about the portal guys and some of the high school guys. So when it comes to Jerome, what do you know about him that you can share with our audience?
Yeah, we've seen South Carolina go this route before where they go out and try to bring a guy home who is originally from the state of South Carolina and has had to spend, some time at junior college. Javon Kinlaw is an example of someone who's played in the NFL now. Look at Elijah Davis on their current roster. He was from South Carolina, went to JUCO, came back to South Carolina. And so I think you could see a similar path here with Jerome Simmons. He's a 6'4", depending on where you look, 292, 300-pound kid. Could be a difference maker for South Carolina. They have not had a ton of traction with high school guys in the 2024 class at defensive tackle. Of course, they had a kind of strangely timed coaching change at that position, going from Jimmy Lindsey to Travian Robertson. So it makes sense for them to kind of bridge the gap. They're in great shape with some 2025s at that position. And, Simmons would be someone who could maybe come in and play early. Very interesting offer list. You have Coastal and Charlotte that are heavily involved and have offered, but also Georgia, Will Muschamp and that group, they have offered Jerome Simmons, which I think speaks to the high-end talent that you have here, speaks to the ability. And so the offer is very, very new for Simmons, but he when he talked to Chris Clark, of course, on Gamecock Central, he didn't hide the fact that, hey, I grew up watching South Carolina. I think this was a big, big, big offer for him. They'll certainly try to sell him on where he would fit in on the depth chart and all those things. But stay tuned. I think a pretty decent chance just here very, very shortly again after the offer, but a decent chance that he ends up in South Carolina's class.
Wes, you just talked about the 2025 class for like a second there. Now we're going to talk about the 2026 class, which whenever I bring that up, it's just like unacceptable because I can't believe that we're already talking about 2026 players and 2027 players. But there is a pretty big time 2026 player from South Carolina, Broome, South Carolina, to be exact, 4-star running back, Jaylen McGill. We were talking about this before we clicked record, but to have a 4-star by your name when you are just a sophomore in high school is pretty impressive stuff. And the Gamecocks are obviously very interested, Wes.
Yeah, very interested. They offered him in the spring. So right now for that 2026 class, currently those are sophomores. There's only 2 4-stars in the state of South Carolina, one being Jazavian Currents, who is from South Point High School, of course, in Rock Hill, and then Jaylen McGill from Broome, which is, Spartanburg area. Well, so this is a name Gamecock fans need to start to familiarize themselves with as well. 4-star running back, could be kind of that next great in-state running back. He's I've got an article up with him on Gamecock Central. He's already visited several times, was at the Florida game. I mean, my man has already had a huge season, even just through 8 games. Is averaging over 100 yards a game. I don't have his stats in front of me. I thought I had them. I'm not prepared, Kendall, but y'all just gonna have to trust me. Go watch the film. This
Prior
kid,
preparation prevents poor performance.
this kid is a beast. Very unique running style, very explosive, great balance, great vision. And he already has an offer from South Carolina, already has an offer from Tennessee. He'll have dozens and dozens of offers before it's over. Not quite the biggest guy yet, but he is a sophomore, so I think he'll continue to gain some size. And Jaylen McGill, name to know, definitely, and a huge target for South Carolina. They have made it clear to him what a priority he is already. So Montario Hardesty has gotten in there early and put South Carolina. I think they're in a good early position, but again, I think it's going to be a battle just because of the number of schools that are going to be involved with this kid as the process goes along.
Well, a lot of it is about being early, right? We've seen South Carolina be successful with a bunch of recruits in the past because they were there developing relationships very early on in the recruiting stages. So the Gamecocks continuing to do the same thing with these in-state guys as we head to the class of 2025, 2026. Wes, do you have a comment?
I have a comment. 1,200 yards.
Teacher,
Yeah,
please
1,200 yards and 17 touchdowns in just 8 games so far, according to Max Preps. So 1,219 yards to be exact. I knew it was in my story somewhere. I was just
get an A+.
17 touchdowns. Thank you.
An A+ for that work. We really appreciate it, Wes, and we appreciate you guys for joining us here on the recruiting rundown on Gamecock Central. We'll have plenty more coming your way over on GamecockCentral.com and on all of our social media platforms at Gamecock Central. But for now, enjoy the rest of your week, everybody. He's Wes Mitchell. I'm Kendall Smith, and we'll see you guys soon.